Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are LivingFit, your trainer's trainer. We not only have education courses for trainers to upgrade their game, but we have full on follow along programs, workouts, exercise breakdowns, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for you to reach your fitness goals. Now, enjoy the show. What's going on, everybody? Master Coach and Education Director here at LivingFit on the LivingFit Show. But enough about me. Let's talk about the honor and the pleasure of who we get to talk to today. This is Jason Skeesick. He is the founder of the Spear and Clover Podcast. Make sure you check it out. Bangers, only bangers on there, all fire. Jason, thanks so much for hopping on. I appreciate it. Love that you could take some time to answer some questions.
Aaron, I'm so excited to be here, man. First off, thank you for the glowing review. I really appreciate that. We're kind of just getting started, but have really had some really great guests. And I got to say, shout out, this is the first podcast I've been on where I'm out mustached.
Oh.
Mustache.
The crazy part about the mustache is I literally have been told by our creative director, if you shave that, then you are fired. So now if I ever need a good stick, like carrots and sticks, I'm just like, if I don't do this, whatever, 100-day challenge or whatever, I have to shave my mustache. And then sure enough, I'm
Oh, that's great.
Real quick, how did you, or real long, you choose. How did you get into fitness?
Yeah, so my relationship with fitness loosely goes back my whole life. I've always been athletic. I always played team sports. I always did side sports. Shout out to my parents for always making sure that I was enrolled in something. And I got to choose what that was. But of course, they would never let me quit. So I always stuck with things when I was a kid. But it really wasn't until I joined the military and got the discipline. I had all the athleticism in the world, all the energy, none of the discipline and focus when I was in high school sports and things like that. It was when I joined the military where I really fell in love with two things, really. One is being able to use my body well and work hard and feel good from doing it. And then two was I actually did a physical labor job where there's 15 guys that we all depended on each other every single day. And so because of that, I fell in love with this camaraderie of like my accountability to other people. So I'm not sure if a lot of people's fitness journeys are like this, but my fitness journey is a lot about my accountability to my training partners and to the people that I coach or that I work out with, if that makes sense. So fast forward to, we opened a CrossFit gym, two military friends and I, called Bucktown CrossFit in 2010. And again, there I continually pushed myself to be better, a little bit because I wanted to be this elite competitor, which I certainly never was. But more because I wanted to show up for those people that I was coaching. And I wanted to show up for those people that I was leading. And I wanted to show up for my training partners. And I've just found over the years that that's been the strongest motivator for me. So I'll kind of break there in the story and just say that's sort of how I got into fitness. And it's certainly what kept me training even up until today.
Yeah, it's so cool that you notice for you, it seemed an imperative part of fitness, which is that bond that you have with the guys and girls that you train with and show up with. Because I'll tell you, owning a gym for 12 years in Southern California, we have that in common, that we own small boxes that people came in. I mean, that was really the thing that seemed to keep people around the longest. I mean, obviously you got to have a good product. You got to know what you're talking about. You can't just be throwing crap up against the wall and hoping that it sticks or whatever. But as long as you've minded those P's and Q's, so to speak, it was really the camaraderie, the community, I think, that was the lifeblood of, it sounds like, your facility and definitely our facility. And so then real quick, could you maybe give some perspective on how that was lost during COVID, but then, what your observation is now coming sort of out of the woods, so to speak?
Yeah. So kind of heading into COVID, just to give you an idea, in 2019, we did, I think, 54 public social events at our gym. We were doing an average one a week. I mean, we were really digging in on community. You know, we had a ton of members that were participating in everything. My wife, Donna, was running all of those events. We had a great team of full-time staff that were putting on, you know, just a really unbelievable product. And at the same time, I was an owner of a company that was consulting for brick and mortar gym owners. And so I was passing that on to other folks. And then the train went off the side of the cliff, right? And so it's funny you asked kind of how that went. I hadn't really prepared to talk about this, but, you know, as soon as when our gym was shut down, I'm in Chicago. I was in Chicago. As soon as our gym was shut down, it wasn't the fitness that kept us together. We did Zoom classes every day for fitness. We lent out all of our equipment. These are things that I think a lot of folks that are listening to this, if you own a gym or belong to a gym like ours, that you experienced. But we were doing daily coffee chats with the owners. We were doing weekly social events. Like we were doing live script table readings of, like, you know, Parks and Rec and The Office scripts. And we were doing trivia multiple times a week. I mean, we really found a way to stay connected. And honestly, I mean, we were, and I don't take credit for this, it really was the community, but we were getting a lot more feedback from like a mental health and like checking in with folks based on the social stuff that we were doing. And certainly I think folks were able to kind of keep their heads above water with the fitness stuff. But for our tribe, and we're very tribal, it was definitely the social stuff that kept people's head above water.
Yeah, I mean, I had the unfortunate and fortunate time, you know, where I was basically just consulting, right? I was LivingFit. We basically were online already. And so for us, it was easy, but then I have something called the level 4 where we've got a bunch of coaches. So probably very similar to obviously the consulting work that you were doing. And man, it was just heart wrenching to see some of them, like basically you just watch them crumble during that time, but then others, and it sounds like this is, you know, what you did, just thrived, and it was thriving. Yeah. You kept, okay, let's keep moving. You know, you can work out inside of your house. You can work out in your garage. You can work out in your yard, you know, or depending on weather, obviously, you get cold weather. I get cold weather here. So sometimes it changes, or you just get out there and get cold and get a good workout either way. But then it was connection, right? Connecting socially. And I wasn't actually planning to go down that road either. You're like, I didn't prepare for this. I'm like, I didn't prepare for that either. But it's just you know, it's obviously observing it from the outside looking in and also experiencing it both. It's like, I think it's good to, you know, touch that sensitive, probably subject even still. Right. So then of course you do consulting, but now you have Spear and Clover. And I'll tell you what, when you were talking to me about Spear and Clover, it like, well, one, I totally misjudged my approach. I was like, oh, Chicago guy, Irish, warrior, army, spear, clover. Cool. I thought I had it figured out, but it was a little bit different than that. I want to hear it again and see if I can get the same shivers that you gave me the first time, but definitely our followers, right?
Man, I would love to give shivers to folks. That'd be a first for sure. So the Spearing Clover is this symbol. If you're watching the video now, it's a Spartan spear, or inspired by a Spartan spear, and kind of infinite loop of rope. And basically what that boils down to is I've always, since the military, I've always kind of sporadically in spurts done rucking as one of my, I call them solo missions, right? So I think of fitness as like, there's group stuff, which I call like elective collective suffering, which I think is really important. But there's also solo missions where you go on a long ruck, or you go in a float tank by yourself, or you meditate, or you do yoga. These things are a little different in what I get from them. So one of those things is rucking. And I live in the Indiana dunes, and I regularly go rucking with my dogs. And so one day, I got a 40-pound pack on my back, and I got a 40-pound log on my shoulder, and I'm hoofing. We did 11 miles through the hills in the sand, and I'm head down, feet moving, pushing as hard as I possibly can towards my target. And the dogs are running out into the woods, and then they come back and check on me. Then they're running out into the woods, and they come back and check on me. And they're diving in the water when we're near the thing, and they come back and they check on me. And it occurred to me in an instant that, like, at my best, that's how I go through life. You know, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm always hard charging towards my goals. But when I'm at my best, when I feel the best and I'm in my center and balanced, is when I'm really passionate about what I'm doing, when I'm taking time to make new friends, when I'm trying new things, when I'm picking up a new hobby while I'm doing it. And so to me, Spearing Clover represents these two core values, which I call like spirit of the puppy, which I was born with. Like every time you walk in the door, I want to come give you a big hug. I want to shake your hand. I want to hang out. I want to talk to people. I want to be around you. And then that military mindset, which I think I picked up, in the Army. And those two things kind of combined kind of represent me at my best. And I've found the folks that I serve, which is entrepreneurs, particularly like renegade entrepreneurs, that's when they are at their best, is not just when they're working really, really hard, but when they're taking time to go out and explore the world. And like, I actually schedule play in my schedule every single week. I schedule fitness, play, solo missions, elective, collective suffering, all that. And to me, that's kind of what the Spearing Clover stands for. And the podcast at its best is highlighting folks who are living that way.
Well, congratulations. You did it again. Shivers again. Dude, I mean, yeah, it's a pretty incredible picture, right? A little word picture that you have. It's rad that it's represented by a badass looking tattoo as well. If anybody's watching and can see that. But man, that concept.
Shout out to Jackie Weinberg, my longtime friend who drew that for me.
Yeah, that's good. It's solid. It's simple, sleek, elegant, all of the things, right? It's good. So then with the Spear and Clover podcast, obviously you've hung up the hat of being a gym owner, you've hung up the hat of being a consultant. So you're essentially full bore into living that Spear and Clover life now. Is that essentially it, or?
Yeah. So I've sold 2 businesses in the last 2 years. I still am a part owner of the gym. And I meet with my brother, Andrew Westcott is running that community really, really well. And he's taken that tribe over and passed the torch, right? We moved to the Indiana Dunes National Park a couple of years ago. And I'm just taking this as an opportunity. I think this is part of that Spear and Clover thing is, people that find some success, a lot of times, they're not able to appreciate that. And they try to just keep pushing. And I said, fuck it, let's retire. Like, I'm retired. I think I retired in 2018 personally, but in 2020 is when we moved here. And so for the last 6 months, I haven't had any constituents. I don't have clients. I don't have, partners. I don't have employees. I just have my newborn baby, my beautiful wife, and jujitsu in this podcast. And so to me, I always tell people, if you want to know what you really love to do, quit working for 6 months and just pay attention, because I'm rolling jujitsu every single day and I'm on the phone every single day, whether it's for a podcast or just to catch up and help folks that I know with entrepreneurs, not just fitness entrepreneurs, but mostly. And I find that I've never gotten off of a call with an entrepreneur with less energy than when I got on. Like, I'm going to be amped all day after this call with you. So this has given me an opportunity to take a break in my life. And I've committed this entire year at least to really just getting to know more entrepreneurs, learning a new skill in jiu-jitsu, and really being there for my newborn daughter and for my wife. So I'm pretty pumped about it, actually.
Yeah. So is jiu-jitsu fairly new, or have you been rolling for a while?
I'm a 0 stripe white belt, brother. Yeah. I got my second black eye this month right here. It's a little baby right here.
It was a little bit more vivid on the call that we were on a little bit ago.
Yeah, shout out to Jeff, the black belt, who's like the nicest, most gentle guy, and he kicked me in the eye.
Come on, he's supposed to have more control than that. He's a black belt. It's the white belt that are out
of it. No, he does. I was silly enough to enter into a leg lock game with him. So I roll with our gym is Torres Martial Arts. Miguel Torres was a former world champion, and it's just a great group of guys. And kind of to continue, there's this thing where, as men especially, but also women, but what I know is men. As men especially, there's this thing where you're like, I want to be the alpha. I want to be the warrior. I want to go out and win the battle. And as a CrossFit gym owner and as a soldier and as like a 250-pound man, like, this is something I've identified with my whole life. And so this journey has been such a really kind of beautiful experience of like, I'm never going to be a professional fighter. I'm never going to beat I roll with a guy named Mo, shout out to Mo, and he's me when I was 23. He's 240 pounds. He's faster than me. He's stronger than me, and he dedicates his whole life to jiu-jitsu. And so now what I find is I'm showing up for him. I'm showing up to make those guys better. I'm showing up. And so I've found that in this journey, I've very quickly shifted and frankly pretty easily shifted to this situation where it's like, okay, so me wanting to be champion isn't reality anymore, but I can help him be a champion. I can help somebody else be a champion, if only by showing up with a big enough body and explosive strength. That's pretty much all I bring to the table right now. So it's been a pretty eye-opening and kind of beautiful experience, honestly.
Yeah, no, shout out to that. Well, and I mean, you will develop the cognitive capacity that you have to grow, and the neural connections or whatever that you're creating when you're creating and finding new ways to move your body and manipulate somebody else's body. I mean, it's just a never ending well there. So aside from that, I wanted to jump back though. You said you schedule play, and this is something I usually talk about when I teach my courses for Living Fit. But we're the only species that stops playing, right? Like all the other mammalian species, at least that we know of, that continue playing into adulthood and then their elderly years before they, pass on. We're the only species that's like, no, we got to hang it up. I got to punch in at the clock and do the work thing and raise the family and talk to me a little bit about you. How did you discover that play was necessary? And obviously some of that is, like you said, elective and collective suffering, which also is play, is like this weird, I could hear it in your voice. You weren't like, oh, I gotta do this. It was like, I get to do this.
No, it's elective. Like I'm inoculating myself to stress. And so my HRV is through the roof. So it's great. But to answer your question, I think of this image of a 3-chambered heart. And one of those chambers is business or career. Typically with the folks I work with, it's business. The other chamber is like social and family. And the other chamber is personal and self. And I think that it's so easy to think that winning is one of those things. Yeah. And so many people I know, primarily, again, with the folks I work with, it's these hard chargers in business or these hard chargers in career. And they're like, I just got to win this thing. And I feel like it's a zero-sum game. If you put too much blood in that one chamber, you're taking it from the other two. And so for me, again, and I mean this literally, this is not figurative. Like when I am taking time to go float in a float tank or take a ruck with my dogs alone and think about myself and do breathing work and get enough sleep and drink enough water, when myself is there, the other two are benefiting. When my family and social life is there, when I take time to go fuck off, if that's okay to say, with my friends, even when I'm super busy, and I do, then the business stuff is there too. So I think the only way to get more blood is to fill up all of those chambers and to really consistently kind of level up all three of those things. And I just think that there's some very easy lies that we can tell ourselves or tricks that we can walk into where you feel like, if I want to get this ball to the hill, I just got to push the same ball harder every single day. And I just don't think that's the way to do it.
Well, I was that for 20 years or whatever. And obviously experienced the fall from that. Right. And the longer you do it, the harder you end up falling typically. Yeah. So obviously that's the pain point. That's a big issue with whether it's type A personalities, male or female, or even people that have grown up with that story. It's like, oh, hustle harder, just got to grind harder, wake up even earlier, go to bed even later, see how far your physiology can go before you start breaking down, and then keep going. What's your advice? What do you tell somebody that's in that right now?
So I've worked with, I have the benefit of knowing some really high performers who I respect a lot, and they don't do that. Yeah. Right. I have friends, the people that I see that take time to play are the people in the bottom and the very top of performers. Sure. There's folks who ignore the business, maybe even ignore the self, and they just do social stuff. I'm not recommending that. But the folks that I know that are the most successful are taking time. They're doing breath work. They're breathing. Their diet's somewhat dialed. I mean, I have the benefit. The guys that come to mind, the Jason Khalipas of the world, the Tim Kennedys of the world. I've met those guys, and I've talked to those guys. I don't know if I would be honored enough to call them friends yet. But when I look at those guys, they're great fathers. They're showing up for their community, and they're champions at what they do. Jocko Willink, whoever you want to talk about. And so to me, I always say, because I had a conversation with somebody who I love and who I respect a lot, but he was like, look, man, I think you guys that have been successful at a certain point in your career, I think you forget that you just ground and ground and ground and ground to get there. And I go, I hear you, but think about the people who you respect and look at what they do. Are they the ones that are totally stressed out, blood pressure through the roof, eating like crap? And if they are, maybe look to somebody else for a role model, because the people who I respect are ultra successful, and I mean that in every sense of the word. And they also show up for their families, and they also, again, Khalipa's a world champion CrossFitter. He's also a brown belt, right?
Yeah. Wasn't Khalipa and Kennedy were both rolling just a little bit ago. Khalipa was on the show.
Yeah, that's why
Jason was on the show, and he was like trying to get to like know me and about me. I was like, bro, the show is about you. Like, people could go read my about, like, but he's that nice, right? And that kind. He's like, he just can't help himself but care. And he's just crushing, right, on all fronts. So yeah, pretty incredible.
Well, I think a big part of that is, he has found his place, and I'm not going to speak for Jason, but hypothetically, he's found his place in the universe where what he is doing is giving him energy. I spent 2 days with him, and he like had me at the garage working out with him in the morning, and then I'm sitting in a meeting he welcomed me into this place, and I'm like, man, you're the real deal. And so for me, my version of that, it's not the same as his, but my version of that is I try to fill my day with only things that give me energy. And so I have all this energy. I think of myself like a shepherd of my own attention span, because I'm ADD, bro. If I don't like have some rails on it, but when I know myself well enough, I can put myself in positions to where the thing that I'm drawn to doing is the virtuous thing, or it is the thing that's going to drive us towards success. And then as an entrepreneur, I just have to backfill those duties and those roles that need to be done by folks that get energy from doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it's like, it's so hard to think of the person that gets filled by doing paperwork or counting numbers, accounting or whatever, but they exist. I've met them.
So coming out of school, I worked at the biggest bank in the world as an underwriter, and I knew all of them, and they looked at me like I was crazy. And so thank God I wasn't better at that. Otherwise we would be having a totally different conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So tell me, how long has Spear and Clover podcast been going, and what are the sights set on? Is there a particular that you're getting to, or are you kind of just rolling around? Because obviously there is a spear in that Spear and Clover.
Yeah, of course. And so what I would say is I'm certainly not, capital R retired. And so we dropped our first podcast in February. I was worried that I wouldn't have I think I wanted to have 8 done by then. And I think I had 14 then. And I think that this week I'll be recording like my 45th. Wow. So we're cranking. And my commitment right now is to just be connecting entrepreneurs. So at the end of this call, I'm going to ask you if there's anybody I can connect you with. And in the last couple of weeks, I've connected a bunch of people with other people that are cool. I have a love for introducing people who I respect, who I think would really enjoy working together. And I think at the end of the day, it would be dishonest of me to say like that I don't expect to be opening businesses or on boards or working with, towards doing those things. I certainly will probably consult and coach other entrepreneurs in the future. I certainly have a big interest in starting other businesses for the rest of my life. But right now, genuinely, because the immediate Maslowian hierarchy of needs are met, then I can just really have an authentic conversation with people like you, and then hopefully develop a network of total badasses from all over the country. Because one of the things I've found, Aaron, is every time that I'm on a call with an entrepreneur, particularly fitness entrepreneurs, it's just me if I grew up in a different place most of the time. It's like, oh, this is cool. Even if we have political differences or different appearances or different hobbies or whatever it is, it's like, oh, I get you. I understand where you're coming from, and you solved your problem differently, and that's neat, and so that's the goal for the immediate future is to build an audience and a community around renegade entrepreneurs who bet it all on their passion.
Yeah, and so then I want to go all the way back to what drove you to choose the Army, and what was that just snapshot? What drove you, and what was that experience?
So highly recommended. It was the best thing I ever did. I didn't need a day past 4 years, but we got what we were looking for. So my whole life, I have dove, spirit of the puppy, dive all in on what I'm doing, and typically had a business around it. So it was like, I loved snowboarding. I worked at the snowboarding hill. I loved cars. I worked at the auto shop. I loved clothing. I worked at the mall. I loved gambling a little too much around 20. And so I dove in deep. I was playing pool and poker tournaments every single night. And I was telling myself I was going to be a professional, and honestly, it just wasn't healthy. And so at a certain point, my mom and I had a conversation where it was just like, look, we got to do something. This isn't working, And so I joined the military. That's what you do. And honestly, it was the best thing I ever did. And so that spirit of the puppy finally found some military mindset. And then here we are,
Nice.
15 years later.
What was your MOS, military occupational special?
So I was a 31 Foxtrot at the time, so I was a network engineer. I got some good advice to go in and become a network engineer. My first deployment, that meant sitting in a shelter and being an operator in Iraq. And my second deployment, I was retasked to what's called a cable dog unit. And so that was 712s, digging holes in 120-degree weather, and laying in conduit and then pulling miles and miles of fiber optic cable. Mm-hmm. So I had not even heard of CrossFit yet, and I probably had a 400-pound nonstop, man. We were metabolic conditioning. And I'll tell you what, the elective collective suffering, the unelective collective suffering is a great lead into that. There's nowhere to go. And I got 15 people from all over the country, from all different socioeconomic and religious and political backgrounds. And we're getting this done, right? I mean, there were days where if a drill bit broke, we're holding a 100-pound jackhammer sideways going through a wall. I mean, you had to get it done, and you're into Crit Iraq, and there was no Amazon.
There was no Amazon. There was no OSHA, obviously.
No OSHA. Yeah, I guess not. No. Bro, we did some wild stuff in those days. Shout out to those guys.
I'll tell you that it might have happened. Right. How many calls have you gotten since then? Because it seems to me like that job is a hot commodity. It seems like the military is really shifting much more towards technology, data, all that stuff. And just from, my observation being a Marine grunt for 16 years.
Yeah, I mean, coming out, it was a very good. I've been blessed so many times in my life to just be in the right place at the right time, and so coming out of the military, I got a job at a big pharmaceutical company based in near Chicago. I had a great job. I was literally like on a BlackBerry. I didn't have a computer, on a BlackBerry, like sending resumes. I had a lease and a job when I touched down in Chicago, and it was great, but it was a super lazy job. I was just sitting in a truck all day, not really doing much. And then by the grace of God, the new GI Bill kind of dropped that summer. And so I enrolled in a finance program at DePaul. And that same year, we opened the CrossFit gym kind of as a muse project. And I was going to be this investment banker and take over the world of that, captain of industry. And lo and behold, I was in these meetings, and I would be there with my boss and my boss's boss and his boss and his boss and an entrepreneur. And the only guy I could see eye to eye with was the entrepreneur. And then the other thing would be, I'd be, well, even just like, I want to do this. And then there'd be 5 reasons why he couldn't. And I'd be over there like, but I think he can. He's done a lot of cool stuff. And I would be, I'd be supposed to like underwrite a $20 million deal. And I'm like working on my $5,000 a month CrossFit gym, like in the terminal, like trying to model it all out. And so it just was, the universe was telling me what my interest was already showing me. And that is that I was always destined to kind of be an entrepreneur. And I really I don't even try anymore to go against my passion and my interest,
No, I'm clearly that you're living. That's what I love. It's like when people are just authentically living what they're talking about. But real quick, you dated yourself with a BlackBerry. Did you lose the little ball in the center, the little scroller ball?
I was working that ball like nobody's business.
So funny. Blackberries. Jeez. Well, we could obviously get into some deep stuff. I think especially, we have a lot of trainers, entrepreneurs, small gym owners, CrossFit box owners, stuff like that are followers and listeners to this podcast, watchers of this podcast. But we'll have to hold that for another time. The last question that we ask all of our guests is, what is Living Fit to them? And obviously not Living Fit the brand. And we've had a variety of answers, to say the least, from the ethereal spiritual to the very didactic, linear. What is living fit to you, Jason?
I think it's going back to that three-chambered heart. I think it starts with balance there. From like a strategic level, it's being balanced, pursuing professional and career goals, pursuing, I do think working hard in very difficult workouts with a group of people is such it's an evolutionary imperative almost. And then for the self, I think solo missions of, things like breath work, things like rucks, things like I'm going to a float right after this call, those types of things where you can look inside and really develop a strong relationship with yourself and where you're at. And then, of course, on a tactical level, I think multiple times a week, ECS, elective collective suffering, once a week, solo mission, going on a ruck, doing that later. And then spending time with your family and friends out in the world and playing. I think especially CrossFitters, not at the highest level, but a lot of CrossFitters are like, oh, I'm a CrossFitter now. When's the last time we played like flag football? Oh, I would get hurt. I think playing is a big thing as well. And so I think none of those things stand on their own. When I've been at my fittest, if I wasn't succeeding in my career, I wasn't happy. And when I've been in my most successful financially, and this is true, I might not have been the fittest. And so what I'm finding is, if you actually want to be happy and fit, you have to do those things at a level that right now you can sustain each of those three chambers. And then over time is when you lean in and can expand the bubble in all three directions.
Man, I love that. It's a simple way to picture it, right? The three-chambered heart. You've got some pretty incredible word pictures. Is there a book in the making here?
I don't know, man. Maybe, I love metaphor, and I've coached hundreds of gym owners. And so I always have to like find a way to like explain to them why KPIs are important.
Yeah, right.
And so metaphor has always been helpful.
And when somebody says KPI, everybody just like falls down and passes out.
Well, and shout out to Layla Hormozi. I was fortunate enough to know her and her husband Alex early on in their development. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but something she said just recently, and it really struck me, was like, it's good for you to like regurgitate stuff you read or something that somebody came up with, but it's really a next level when you have your own point of view, your own shit that you came up with and is your brand. And so to me, it's important that I tell my story, not just like tell you the 5 different, collages of quotes that I have heard that I've taken away from. Does that make sense?
100%. And obviously it shows. Again, you're living what you're talking about. Like you're very authentic and very you. Like I've literally never heard the three-chambered heart, and I have read too many books, right? Like I'm book a week guy. So like the fact that and the Spear and Clover, no, you're knocking me dead. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Fire for sure.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate you, man. You're great.
Well, thank you very much, Jason. It was an honor to have you on the show, and we'll definitely have you back. Hey, for more interviews like that, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're looking for not only those interviews, but follow along programs, exercise breakdowns, workouts, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for your fitness results, make sure you hop on to living.fit, become a member today, and I'll see you on the next one.